welcome again. I think this is a great kickoff to next month, which is Earth Month and Earth Day happening. There you will see that both the village, the foundation, and us here, we do have some programs to highlight just the importance of taking care of our home, of making sure that it is here for generations to come, and that no matter how small, we can each make a difference in our own little world. So I do encourage you to recycle, to bring your utensils. Those of you who came, thank you, thank you. There we go. And just to be conscious of the fact that we do need to take care of our planet because we are in a little bit of trouble. So I am not going to say anything aside from the fact that, again, we are so thankful to the Key Biscayne Community Foundation for their sponsorship, their partnership, just the incredible relationship that we have with them and their dedication to this community. I'm going to turn the mic over to Ramya, and she is going to introduce the program today.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. For those of you that don't know, my name is Ramya. I'm the Director of Environmental Science for the Key Biscayne Community Foundation. We do these lectures every month, usually the last Thursday in the month, depending on what's going on. We sometimes have to switch that around. Quick note regarding utensils that a few of you did bring with you. I did hand out a bunch of those to a lot of you that were here when I had a presentation about plastic-free KV. We are getting another shipment of them. I will give them out one more time, but you have to remember to bring them, because I'm not going to give them to you again. They're not cheap. I'll let you know when that's going to happen, so make sure and show up to that lecture. I'll let Roxy know ahead of time so she can tell you guys to make sure and come and get your utensils so you can bring those with you for these lunches that we have. Today, we have with us Michelle and Sophie. Michelle works with the Nature Conservancy. I don't remember your title, but I'll let her tell you. And they're going to talk today about a really interesting program that they have for people aged 18 to 24. So if you have any kids or grandkids that might be interested, keep this in mind. Sophie is one of the program participants, so she's going to talk about her experience doing that. So with that, I will hand it off to Michelle.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. My name is Michelle Zelaya Wagner. I'm the Associate Director of Development at the Nature Conservancy, and again, joined by the lovely Sophie Dellinger, who participated in our externship program. Today, I'm going to be sharing just a general overview of our organization, as well as our partnership that we have with National Geographic Society. And then I'm going to hand it over to Sophie so she can share a little bit more about her experience. And today, my goal is to leave you with a little bit of enthusiasm and hopefully a little glimmer of hope that we so desperately need right now. Before I begin, I would like to ask everyone, please raise your hand if you are familiar with the Nature Conservancy. Wonderful, wonderful. Everyone who raised their hand, you got an A+, and that's it, we're done. All right. Just kidding. But in all seriousness, I do just want to say thank you. It is with your support that makes all of this important work that we're able to move this forward. And so for the people who may not be familiar with the Nature Conservancy, our mission is to conserve the lands and waters on which all life depends. We have been around for about 75 years, and we have helped find the people and the path that make this change possible. Today, what that looks like is we have the support of over 1 million members, many of you in this room, and they're dedicated to the efforts of more than 5,000 staff members. Of those staff members, we have 1,000 that are scientists, and we work alongside partners, communities, decision makers all around the world. We work in 80 countries, we work in all 50 states, and alongside partners and communities, we've conserved, I'm gonna pause, 125 million acres of land. In addition to that, we have conserved 280 million acres of ocean areas, and we are now focusing on our really important work of fresh water for millions of people all around the world. We've accomplished a lot of good, but where are we at today? Right now, we are in a very challenging part of our life. We have the interconnected crises of climate change and nature loss. We have identified that we have years not decades, to address these crises. And while we recognize these stakes have never been higher, neither has been our ambition. That ambition that we have is guided by a belief. We believe that by scaling our local communities into our global work, we can create a future that has a livable climate, healthy communities, and thriving nature. And how does TNC do this job? Well, we develop breakthrough tools and ideas. When people face barriers, we provide the science, the tools, and the partnerships to help break through. As an organization, we partner again at that local level. We partner with Indigenous communities and communities all around the world. When those communities speak, we listen, we learn, and we support their conservation leadership. At a policy level, we influence decision-making. When change needs a champion, we step up. We work with those government, businesses, and communities to scale the solutions. And now that you know a little bit about what we want to accomplish long-term, how are we going to get there? I have a lot of doom and gloom on the slides, but I promise we'll get to the hope soon. At TNC, we have these huge goals, as you can see on this slide. And we recognize that these must be accomplished by 2030 if we're going to meaningfully address climate and biodiversity loss. So you may be asking, Michelle, you started this slide with youth. I'm getting there, I promise. And so when we look at these goals, we identify that our youth play an important part of this work. We have to amplify their voices, provide leadership opportunities, and ensure that this work extends far beyond 2030. So I know for me, when I think of these giant goals, I don't know where to start. And so I would like everybody to participate in a quick exercise. I want everybody to think about your favorite living thing. So this could be a bird, a tree, a squirrel, maybe something more exotic that you've seen at a zoo or on your travels. Can I get a couple people to raise your hand about what's your favorite living thing?
Your wife.
Your wife. Humans. We love humans. Great answer. Love that. Anybody else? Favorite living thing? What was it? A manatees. We love manatees. Yes, in the far corner. Vulcans. Thank you.
Doves that come and visit me every day on my balcony.
The two doves that visits on the balcony.
Frogs.
Frogs. Can we get a couple? Just shout them out. Shout them out.
Trees.
Trees. Here we go. Anybody else? Favorite? Iguanas. Come on. What are your favorite things? What do you love? What are your favorite loving things? We got dogs. We got turtles. What else? Far back. What? Dolphins. Awesome.
Elephant.
Love that. And so why does that matter? So I may have missed the 1970s, but many of you didn't. You have seen firsthand the biodiversity loss that I'm talking about. And I'm going to pause right now because this is really important. Since the 1970s, we have lost 70% of our wildlife populations. So that's our amphibians, our mammals, our fish, reptiles, the species that a lot of you just named in this room. And this isn't just about animals disappearing somewhere far, far away. What this means on a local level is it's our clean water, our food, our pollinators, climate stability. It's our human health. When biodiversity around the world decreases, it makes it less resilient, and it makes us less resilient. So I do want to bring it back to this room today to answer the question, what are our young people doing? Where are they finding the answers? Young people all around the world are making a difference to protect the wildlife and habitat with tangible conservation impacts. In one study, it was demonstrated that young people firsthand helped conserve 1 million hectares of land. And we found that if young people are involved in decision making, it has a 40% higher success rate. And that's probably because this generation is so full of hope. We're action oriented, we're solution seeking, and we want to really address what it is when we talk about climate change. At the Nature Conservancy, we have a broad strategy. Within the youth development space, we have 3 different areas that we partnership with different youth programs. We have Advance, where we expand education opportunities for young people through policy, systems change. We Elevate, which is a meaningful role for people in leadership and decision making, and Ignite. And this is deeper connections through nature, through learning experiences, that we really want to spark curiosity, agency, that long-term commitment to biodiversity solutions. And so for the rest of today, I'd like to really dig into one of these programs, and this is our externship program. So back in 2021, the Nature Conservancy and National Geographic Society, we had a conversation about what are your youth programs doing? What does education look like from your end? How can we join forces together to address the problems that we have today? How can we expand youth decision making? How can we empower youth to make a local impact? And what programs can we invest in to make sure that these young people have access to nature-based careers, learning, and leadership? As we considered all of these different options and we listened to young people, we identified some gaps that are currently existing for young people to be able to take advantage of these opportunities. One of the things that come to mind is internships. Great thing, great for college resumes. How do you get access to internships? We found that there's barriers. First, you have to know what an internship is. You have to understand from a cultural relevancy what that opportunity is. Typically, you have to be established with a local university. You have to have a university affiliation. You have to be able to travel. A lot of times they're unpaid, so you're either paying for reduced or no pay. And there may be things that we don't necessarily see. That sense of belonging due to identity, gender, race, physical limitations, cultural considerations. And so if we need to find different equitable outcomes, we first have to identify what those gaps are and what the steps are so that people can get into these nature-based roles. Out of this thinking, the Nature Conservancy and National Geographic Externship Program is born. Every aspect of the externship was intentionally designed so we can provide opportunities for young people. Our goal is to expand their understanding of environmental issues, prepare them for careers in the program, prepare them for the nature-based economy that's developing, and provide opportunities for kids that are adults ages 18 to 25. So what is the externship? Again, to solve these really complex conservation problems, we need solutions from the people who are in those communities. Those are the people who are most affected. Those are the people who care the most. This externship offers youth ages 18 to 25 a leadership experience that equips them with knowledge, tools, the relationships needed to take action for their communities. For 8 weeks, they participate by identifying a problem in their local community. They have different technical assistance programs from both leadership within the Nature Conservancy as well as National Geographic Society, and they have mentor sessions in between their peers. Their work culminates and they have an interactive digital story map that they create, they share with their peers, they share with their local communities, and we've been very successful. This program was designed to be able to rapidly reach a lot of people throughout the entire globe, and it was designed to be accessible for young people regardless of their academic journey. We've had people from business, biology, economics, we've even had a fashion major, there we go, who participated in the program. And today we are going to hear from Sophie, who completed her project here locally in Miami, and she's going to share more about her experience. And I'm going to pass it over to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sophie. I was an extern in the summer of 2023, so almost 3 years ago now at this point. I'm originally from Boulder, Colorado, and what really drew me to this externship is kind of a little bit of a story. So I grew up in Colorado. I was in a community that was very conservation oriented. All of my field trips growing up in elementary school were to a local water festival to talk about water conservation because drought was really relevant in my community at that time. So I grew up kind of focused more on freshwater conservation, obviously being in a landlocked state, not having access to the ocean. I went to college in Colorado as well, at Colorado College in Colorado Springs. And while I was there, I was studying political science and something called Southwest Studies, which is kind of an interdisciplinary major that focuses on the people and the ecology of the Southwest. So I was focusing a lot on Western water rights, especially with the rivers down there, in-stream flows, and protecting the local aquatic creatures within those rivers. My dad, when he was in graduate school, was a dive master, and growing up, he always used to tell me stories about the ocean. I never really got to travel to the ocean very much, but when I turned 18, he took my family on a trip to Cozumel, Mexico, where I got scuba certified, and I immediately fell in love with it. While I was there, I thought that the reef there was so beautiful. I remember very vividly coming up from one of my first ocean dives and telling my dive master, "Wow, your reef is so beautiful, it's so colorful, it must be so healthy." And he kind of laughed a little bit and looked at me and he said, "You're right, our reef is beautiful, but I'm not really sure I would call it healthy." So we launched kind of into a story about Cozumel and how the reefs there had changed a lot, much like they have here in Florida, as I'm sure all of you are very familiar with. I immediately fell in love with the ocean, knew I wanted to do more with it, but I felt stuck in Colorado. I was already in school, and I didn't really have an opportunity to come out here or somewhere near the ocean. So I looked for internships online, and I stumbled across the Nature Conservancy and National Geographic Externship. And I really had no hard background in marine biology. Like I mentioned, I had been studying Southwest Studies and political science, and I also kind of needed the flexibility of having a remote internship because I had to get knee reconstruction surgery that summer as well. I got in an accident while I was skiing, so I was essentially bedridden. So there were a lot of obstacles for me when it came to doing an internship. During that externship there with the Nature Conservancy, I focused on what originally inspired me, which was the story of Cozumel's changing reefs. So right now, they have a very big problem with over-tourism. So there are a lot of cruise ships that visit the island there, and they have over 5 million visitors, even though their local inhabitants is around 88,000. So there has been a growing issue with cruise ships bringing in large volumes of people, but really the main problem that was occurring there was that these cruise ships are dumping their raw sewage right into the ocean, right where the reefs are. So here in the U.S., in some areas, not all areas, there are marine laws that prohibit the dumping of raw sewage within 12 nautical miles of shore. That is not the case in Cozumel or in Mexico. So these cruise ships come into the local cruise piers. They're right next to a marine protected area, which is where everyone dives, and they dump their raw sewage into the ocean. This is a problem because it causes a process called eutrophication. So our sewage is very high in nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, nitrates, and all of those lead to, that increase in nutrients leads to an overgrowth of algae. So that's also something that you all have, maybe if you've been out in the oceans here, it's also something that you have seen here as well. So this is a picture of one of the local restoration groups there in Cozumel, but I decided to focus my project on how the cruise ship industry was impacting the reefs there. So this is a picture kind of to illustrate that problem as well. So this is a picture of a coral colony. It's a finger coral called Porites furcata. This is a picture I took on a reef in 2023. As you can see, the colony in the top portion is pretty healthy. You can see all of the polyps here on those individual corals are extended, so it means it's thriving and doing well. And then I went back to the same coral colony less than a year later, and this is what I found. This is a picture of the same colony, but right now it's covered in macroalgae. So essentially what this algae has done is algae grows very quickly. It outcompetes with coral for space and sunlight. So this algae has completely almost overgrown this coral. And what we're seeing is a shift from a coral-dominated ecosystem to an algal-dominated ecosystem. And this is happening widespread. This is not just happening in Cozumel. It's happening here in Florida and the Caribbean region-wide for lots of different reasons, but here focused in my project, one of the things that's accelerating the shift to an algal-dominated ecosystem is the amount of cruise tourism. So at the time of my project, they were proposing to build a 4th cruise pier. They already have 3 in Cozumel. If they had constructed this 4th cruise pier, it would have been able to bring in more than 30 million tourists a year. To put that into perspective for all of you, that's double the amount of people who visit Paris each year. So that is a small little island just off of Cozumel, or just off of mainland Mexico, off of Cancun. They wanted to propose to build this cruise pier, even though the current cruise piers there, the 3 other ones, were only reaching 54% capacity. Throughout my externship, I did that research there and created a story map. But one of really the standout moments for me was meeting externs from all over the world and hearing about their projects. I had people in my cohort from Trinidad and Tobago, from Pakistan, from places all over the world. I think especially for young people, it can be very hard to hear about the doom and gloom associated with climate change, and especially for the marine conservation focus, the increasing temperatures that our oceans are facing and what's happening to our reefs. It was really an amazing experience getting to hear from people who were just as passionate as myself about these issues. And it was kind of a glimmer of hope for myself to see that there were people from all over the world who were coming together to work on conserving our reefs and our oceans. We also had the opportunity to do check-in meetings and have the mentorship of different scientists and researchers from the Nature Conservancy. It was also a really great networking opportunity and getting to hear how these people were able to reach the positions that they are now in the field, how they started and how they ended up there. There were a couple major takeaways for me from this experience. I kind of was able to really understand a path forward for myself. I had always really been interested in the combination of science and policy. So throughout this project, one of the things that I focused on for my solutions was you can install these equipment called port reception facilities. So these port reception facilities can go on those cruise piers, and instead of having people dump their sewage directly into the ocean, they can offload their sewage into the port reception facilities. So it was also focused on maybe finding solutions to some of those problems that were created. And that really led to an interest of getting involved in a career of science and policy, and made me realize that I could do things like work for NOAA and that there is a path forward for combining my interests. I also really learned about the importance of community involvement and buy-in, and also learning about parachute science, which I've been able to take into my own restoration practices here in Florida. It's really important to make sure that the local community that you're working in understands the work that you're doing and also supports the work that you're doing. So that's something that I've definitely brought forward with me into the work that I do now. Kind of to end on a glimmer of hope, for the issue in Cozumel, Cozumel actually did not end up building a 4th cruise pier, which was really great news. The community really had been working hard for several years. They filed a lawsuit together, and they were able to put an injunction, a permanent injunction, on the 4th cruise pier. That 4th cruise pier was supposed to go in an area where there were several species of critically endangered corals, and it would have brought in much greater volume of tourism to their area and probably would have been pretty detrimental to their reefs. So they really rallied together as a community, and it was a big success for them, as they were very worried that it was going to be put into place. So that was an awesome success for them, and they're doing some really great work now with their coral restoration program there. But after I finished my externship, I received a venture grant from my school to continue working on my projects. Because I became so interested in what was happening with Cozumel, I was able to go back for 2 months and do a little bit more work with actual water sampling there, which was very cool. And then after graduating, I moved to the Keys. So I got an internship at Coral Restoration Foundation in Key Largo. I became a scientific diver and I worked in their coral nurseries, taking care of their coral trees and also helping them with outplanting and a few other things. And then after that year at Coral Restoration Foundation, I kind of went back to my original roots of what inspired me, which was really my instructor in Cozumel, Luis. So I give him a lot of credit to what I've now become. So I became a scuba instructor, and I'm currently in charge of a mangrove grant for their nonprofit organization called Ocean Conservation Foundation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sophie. And I do just want to take a moment right now and just say thank you for you welcoming us and being able to share a little bit more about our experience and the work that we're doing. The next slide, we're going to have a QR code. So the externship program that Sophie participated in specifically has an emphasis on ocean, so ocean conservation. We just opened up our next application process, and so there'll be a QR code. Again, if you have grandkids, kids, young people who could potentially be interested in taking part of this, there is an opportunity for application. Another way to participate is by giving and supporting this program directly. That QR code will take you to the website, a lot of really great videos of just some of our students doing incredible work. But right now, I do just want to open it up for an opportunity to ask questions. So either one of us, and we're happy to answer some questions.
Parachute. Parachute science. Parachute science is where you have scientists or researchers who go to other countries. And when they go to other countries, they don't have the involvement of the local community or local scientists, and then they come back to their country of origin and publish their results or data without really acknowledging the community that has put in a lot of work there, and they're not really informing them of the science that's occurring. So that was a big topic of conversation throughout the externship. We would meet kind of weekly and talk about different topics in marine conservation, and when we were doing our projects, things to avoid. So that was something of special consideration for my project because I'm not from Cozumel, I'm not from Mexico, so that was something that was really important to me, was making sure to acknowledge the work of the local community that had been fighting against cruise ships coming in for a long time, and also working with the local restoration program there, who had been restoring their reefs for a while.
In our oceans, is
Mhm.
because they're international and this cannot be regulated? How is this happening?
So the question was about how the sewage can be dumped into our ocean, and if there's international regulations about that. There's no uniform international regulations about sewage dumping. It's up to the receiving port's country to decide what the regulations are. So if there was a cruise ship from a different country coming into Key West, for example, it's up to Key West what their local regulations are. It's not, there's no uniform international regulation on sewage dumping.
Go directly to the cruise line companies. Forget about the country. That's crazy trying to think you're going to get, legislation all around the world. But the cruise lines are owned by, I think that'd be much more effective and a better solution.
That's a great question. And we do a lot of work like that. And so I would say from the Nature Conservancy, we try to help guide policy, but then we also work with corporations. And so the role that we really see is we're an organization where our responsibility is to be able to go and do the research. And so we go, and if we're looking at coral degradation in specific areas, and we're able to identify this could be substantially increased, we could have more flourishing ecosystems because of if we change this regulation, That will be an area where we will go to our local policy, we'll go to businesses, and we'll provide the research that we have from our scientists so they can make a better, well-informed decision whenever they're making their different policies from a legislative perspective, as well as from their corporate standings.
Can you repeat questions? Just repeat them all.
Yes. So the question was, instead of going port by port, why don't you just go directly to the cruise lines to have conversation with them? And a great question. Thank you so much.
I'll also just add, especially for profit companies, one of the challenges that we've seen occur recently too is greenwashing. So it has definitely, there are people who are working to try and make these cruise lines improve their practices, but something we've seen in return is a lot of greenwashing, like I just said. So cruise lines now market themselves as having advanced wastewater treatment systems, and they try and tell their people that are using them that they're taking care of their sewage better, but that's not necessarily the case. They're still, the sewage that they're dumping goes through treatment, but they essentially are separating the liquids and the solids of sewage and still dumping the solids while they're treating the liquids. So it's still a problem. It's just they're finding kind of ways around that.
Bins for recycling, the separate bins for composting, do they do that?
I'm not sure. I have never, the question was, do cruise ships compost or separate recycling? I've personally never been on a cruise ship, so I'm not sure exactly how that goes. Do you know?
The question was, do cruise lines offer composting, recycling? I would say from a personal standpoint, I believe so. But I agree. I think when we're looking at some of our different areas in society, I mean, we think of cruise ports, you think of different opportunities by partnering with, Miami is a large entertainment, so concerts, different venues. I think that's a great area just to start at a local level for policy is, do they have recycling options? Because we've found that more often than not, people do care. And if they do have an option of, do you want fresh water? Do you want a healthy soils? Do you want a thriving environment? The answer is yes. And so being able to provide those opportunities are something that are great conversation starters. The question is who pays for the sewage?
Oh, for the port reception facilities. So that was something that I had looked into. So the International Maritime Organization is one of the bodies that creates international regulations. So there are certain annexes and laws around waste disposal. It's just not specified uniformly internationally, but there is a grant that countries can apply for if they want to install port reception facilities within their own country. They can apply to the International Maritime Organization to install these port reception facilities. But when it comes to the actual waste disposal itself, once it gets running, that would obviously be an issue that the country itself would have to deal with, which is one of the problems with Cozumel. Cozumel doesn't have a lot of infrastructure on the island in terms of water treatment and sewage treatment. So that's definitely one of the challenges that they're facing, as well as if they were to install those port reception facilities, that would be an additional expense that they would essentially have to take on. But it is a trade-off because they make a lot of money off of their reefs. They have thousands of divers that come in every day, snorkelers, people who come to see these beautiful reefs. And by not taking care of their reefs, not disposing of that sewage properly, they're going to lose a large resource from tourism that they've been bringing in. So it's a trade-off because eventually they will pay the price for not taking as good of care of their reefs as they could have. They did actually recently impose an individual tax on every person who comes off of a cruise ship. You're required to now pay a fee to the port, and that money is supposedly used for maintenance in the marine protected area and if they need to do restoration or other efforts like that. So the local community is trying to get more money to come out of the cruise ships that are docking and the people who do come off the docks to put it towards restoration practices in the marine protected area.
And I'll just add on one thing that came to mind. So Sophie was talking about ecotourism and the importance of that, especially here in Miami. That's your oceans is one of the biggest drivers for people coming in tourism. And we just recently announced from the Nature Conservancy a study that here specifically in the state of Florida, when you invest in conservation, that amount is amplified throughout the entire economy. And so specifically for Florida, for every $1 that's invested, $1.4 trickles through and amplifies throughout the economy. And so we found that being able to invest in these nature-based solutions, it really does have a long-term effect on the economy, and it returns back to businesses as well as individuals.
You go into the school and talk to them, and how successful are you that you get young ladies like this?
Fantastic. The question is, what else is the Nature Conservancy doing? So we have this one program, which is our focus within the college age, so the 18 to 25. Are we going into the local school systems? The answer is yes, and much, much more. So within the Nature Conservancy, we have 220 programs just like this one. And so this is just one of the many ways that we are going and we're working with our youth. We have partnerships with Nickelodeon. We did something with Dora and SpongeBob. And so we're really trying to have these conversations and meet youth where they're at. We provide different lessons plans for throughout the world, teachers globally. And so they're based off of each grade level. And so if you're in kindergarten, you're a science teacher, you can go on our website. We have the full entire lesson plan available. And we try to make these very timely. And so we have introduction of topics and themes. We're very loosely bringing up conversations about climate and what does climate change. We found that 70% of students want to learn about the environment. They want to learn about climate. And there's a gap right now because our science teachers don't feel equipped to be able to have those conversations in the classroom. And that's an area that the Nature Conservancy is really passionate about, is making sure that our next generation, they have the information that they wanted. We have, for this program alone, we have 200 spots on each cohort. And this past year, we've received 17,000 applications. And so the demands that we have from young people right now of how do we care for our world, how do we care for our planet, they're ready. They're ready for those conversations.
In the lower grade, kindergarten, first grade, to introduce them and get them interested, and you hope, and it'll get them away from the computer, like she does what she does, how wonderful. She doesn't sit in an office for 10 hours, so you're very lucky.
Yes,
You're
I am.
lucky.
The comment was, so the goal is to meet students at the elementary level and introduce them to these topics so they don't grow up with the screen in front of their face. And so definitely agree with that mentality. And what we've done is we've been able to identify different marks where we have those conversations with young people. And so we introduce them to the topics. We're a firm believer that for you to care about something, you have to go experience it yourself. Shameless plug, if you've never been to a Nature Conservancy preserve, we have 4 of them locally here in Florida. We have different field trips throughout the year, and so you can come out. We have these giant buggies where we go in through the Lake Wales Ridge. I've never seen elevation in Florida. I promise it exists. We also have Blowing Rocks Preserve, which is up in Jupiter. It's a beautiful preserve. It has the blowing rocks. It's been part of the different film series. But we found that once you get people out in nature, they care about it more.
I just wanted to add to that, the comment that, we should start when kids are really young. And I just wanted to point out, obviously, everybody knows this, when kids are really little is when they get super, super into stuff. They have the biggest and best imaginations when they're younger, and life hasn't beaten that out of them yet. So, igniting their interest when they still have that ability to get so imaginative and excited and really get into something like this, it's really the best time to reach them. I can't express how many times when I tell somebody I'm a marine biologist, they tell me, "Oh, I wanted to be a marine biologist when I was a kid." Everybody says that to me all the time. For whatever reason, it wasn't continuously encouraged, and so they ended up going into other things. But then they remember when I was a kid, they're like, "Oh, I learned about dolphins, or I learned about seahorses. It was so cool, and I loved it." And so really nurturing that, I think, is super important at a young age.
Yeah, cool.
Any more questions?
How could you say, coral,
The question was, how quickly does coral grow? So each species is unique. So here in Florida, the previous dominant coral that you would see on the reef was elkhorn and staghorn. Those corals tend to grow pretty quickly, but they have been a little bit less resilient to the ocean temperatures rising. So we've seen a huge decline in those populations. In Florida here, since the 1970s, 99% of their population has been lost. This past year, those two species of coral were classified as functionally extinct from Florida, meaning that their populations are so low that they're not able to reproduce on their own without assistance in the wild. But there are so those corals grow pretty quickly. The outplants that we have, they can grow to be like 5-6 inches per year about. So they get pretty big. Like we outplant them the size of your hand, and we would outplant them in clusters of the same genotype, and they fuse together to form these things called thickets, which give the reef more structure. And they can form that structure pretty quickly. We see pretty successful outplants after 2 to 3 years. And then there are slower growing species of coral, which are those bouldering corals. They grow a lot slower than those branching corals that you see, but they're more hardy to other things like heat. So that's why you need biodiversity, which is one of the things that Michelle was talking about earlier. It's really important to have a mix of both as a result.
I'm being sarcastic. The question was, do I believe in global warming? And I would say the 1,000 scientists that we have on staff, they appreciate the question, because I do think that it allows an opportunity to have the conversation of where it is that we see opportunities to advance those nature-based solutions.
Coral reefs. The question was, how optimistic am I about the future of coral reefs? I think that is a complicated question. Currently, shallow coral reefs in Florida and the Caribbean are at risk of becoming completely extinct within the next 30 years. I think that especially as these thermal anomalies, as we used to call it, with rising ocean temperatures, now that they're becoming not anomalies and they're instead becoming normal, we are in kind of a time of peril right now. But I do think that restoration organizations here are doing a really good job at protecting genetic diversity. Restoration organizations like Coral Restoration Foundation in the Keys and lots of organizations down there are doing a really good job with genetic management, which is really what the field of restoration is kind of shifting towards right now, is we need to protect that biodiversity, making sure we have as much variation in those different species and genotypes within those species, because that's what really makes recovery possible. And we have seen recovery. There was a big coral bleaching event here in Florida in 2023. In the Keys, the bayside reached 101 degrees, and the ocean reached around 98, 99, depending on where you were. And the bleaching threshold for coral is 87 degrees. So we exceeded that by quite a bit. So that did cause a lot of loss of years and tens of years of work that people had been doing in the Keys. But I started my internship right around that time, and I've seen a lot of new coral growth on the reef from the outplants. So I do have hope. I don't think hope is lost in any sense. I just think that we have to shift our perspectives on, we can't be comparing reefs to what they used to look like in the 1970s and make that our goal for what we want reefs to look like in the future. We have to accept that reefs are going to look different, but that doesn't mean that hope is lost. I think there's a lot of good work happening right now in terms of maintaining that biodiversity and genetic management, that I do have hope for the future. So, yeah.
I just wanted to add to that. I tend to be really cynical about the future. But aside from my job at the Key Biscayne Foundation, I also work as the senior grant administrator for the Coral Futures Lab at the UM Marine School, Rasmus, that's right on Virginia Key. And they are doing some really interesting research there. They're breeding corals in the lab that they're basically attempting to breed corals that are more heat and disease resistant. So after the huge bleaching event in 2023, they went out and collected samples from the corals that survived that heat event. Not the ones that grew back, but the ones that actually didn't die during the heat event. So they somehow managed to not bleach or not die, or, you know, bleaching doesn't actually kill them immediately. They're not dead when they bleach, they die after bleaching. So they can possibly recover from a bleaching event, but a lot of them don't. But anyway, so they collected a lot of these corals that did survive the bleaching event, and they're using those to try to create, I don't want to say a super coral, but they're also keeping up with genetic diversity. They are partnering with institutions all over the country, and they all trade basically pieces of coral, different genotypes, to make sure that they're keeping up the genetic diversity, but also at the same time trying to breed in resistance to heat and disease. So, and then they have a program, Rescue a Reef, that goes out and outplants corals that they grow in their coral nursery. So they are also here in Florida, right around Key Biscayne actually, attempting to work on helping the reef recover and maintain its ability to survive in warming temperatures. Any other questions? All right, thank you guys very much for coming. Thank you, Sophie and Michelle. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.